logged on. There we go, going to record the session. So I think there's a few people that didn't make it to the first part. So hopefully you've watched the video and you're ready to go. Oliver is going to have a quick chat to everybody first, and then I'll introduce Claire. Same introduction as last time, but for those that didn't hear it, I'll just go through it again. So Oliver.
Thanks very much indeed, Marie. Yeah, just wanted to start by saying welcoming everybody and thank you for coming to this second seminar by Claire. Before we get cracking, I wanted to say that we reiterate now that whenever any of your supporters make a will through Make a Will Online, they will have the opportunity to further protect the wishes in their will using Capacity Vault. We've developed Capacity Vault to run alongside Make a Will Online to protect the wishes of people's wills from challenge under the under undue influence, fraud, or mainly testamentary capacity. So it's very valuable to anybody who is worried that their will might be challenged. If they are older, if they're suffering from a dementia-related diagnosis, or if they believe there's someone out there who may want to take a pop at the wishes in their will. But without further ado, if anybody wants any information about that, do get in touch. We'd love to talk further. Without further ado, I'll hand back to Marie.
Right then, so Claire, she's a fundraising consultant who's worked across the fundraising mix and delivers actual campaigns and supports many teams, as well as offering a range of training solutions. She's an expert on legacies and has worked with various causes: conservation, hospices, rescue, arts, medical and community support. And over to you, Claire, for the second part of this seminar.
Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen and see if it's as slick as it was in the practice. Okay, here we go. So part two. Yes, I am a legacy consultant, and yes, I actually do deliver campaigns as well. There's actually quite a shortage of resource in the legacy sector when it comes to fundraisers right now. So what I tend to do is I tend to go in and support teams and actually deliver legacy appeals. So I'm not just talking from a perspective of somebody who's got the theory, I actually understand the practice too. Okay, so last week we were talking about how to empower everyone in your organisation to have positive legacy conversations and really own the income. And the reason that I chose this topic and the reason that you're here is that you must realise that sometimes not everybody does know how to talk about legacies. There can be some misconceptions about this income generation stream, and in terms of owning it, quite often legacies are seen as something separate and not to do with the other members of the team, and that's just definitely not the case, because you receive a legacy when there has been a positive connection, a really strong positive connection with your charity. Okay, so I'm trying to let's see if my slides will work. Okay, so just a recap from last week. Legacy conversations, they shouldn't be difficult. You know, we don't have to talk in terms of the all the things that you need to do in order to get your affairs in order. That's up to the individual. You know, that's their responsibility. I always draw the comparison of when you're asking somebody to make a donation, you don't go checking in the fridge to see that they've got enough milk for the week, or if you're asking them to go on a challenge, you don't ask them, you know, if their passport is up to date. So those nuts and bolts, we don't really need to be worried about. And all we need to talk about is how exciting our cause is and what the problem it is that we want to solve. It doesn't need to be restrictive as well, and that's both. It doesn't need to be just a conversation that the legacy fundraising team or the legacy fundraiser or the trustees have. It should be a conversation that everybody in your organisation can be excited about and say, do you know what? We really benefit from gifts in wills, and it's fantastic, and it's something anybody can give. And that's a way that we really benefit here at our cause. So it's not restrictive in terms of the conversations that people can have. And also, I really like legacies because they're in an inclusive way. When any appeal is running, you can add a legacy ask alongside it, in my opinion, and this works really well because some people might be a little bit cash poor, especially when times are like this and they're so uncertain. But by identifying that you're going to leave a pledge in your will, you can be included in the current campaigning activity. So it's not limiting. It doesn't need to be unrealistic, a gift no matter what size. Now, one thing on this I would say, I have seen an increase when I worked with SME and Ford, I have seen an increase in the 1% gifts in wills because the charity sector as a whole have talked about just 1% of your estate would make such a difference. Now, people have taken that literally and started just leaving 1% instead of 10, 50, 75. So I wouldn't necessarily just aim low, just saying any gift in your will would be greatly received. We don't need to worry about the mechanics, that's not your job. I touched on that just before, but we really don't need to get bogged down with legal language and tax and all kinds of things that are the solicitor's job, and that's why you're here with Make a Will. That's not our job, we're just talking about inspiration, and that is the key reason why you're involved with your cause at the moment and historically. Okay, so how do you make your message stand out from the crowd? How do you get people to connect very deeply with what you do? Well, you go to your mission. And again, I touched on this last time. You think about your vision. What would the world look like if your problem was solved? What kind of benefit are you trying to create for the world as a whole? And where are your values? Again, definitely not the mechanics. And I can't stress that enough. Again, that's not your job. So we talked about the 3 R's last time. Make your messages relatable, rememberable, and retellable. And what you want to do is give people messages that they can take away and then become organic legacy fundraising advocates themselves. And they can spread the word. They can tell their family. They can tell their friends. They can tell you. I've had people coming in and an executor giving a donation to a charity that I've supported. And it was absolutely delightful because he said back to me the messages that we had been putting out there. And it was just like, success. He's heard what we're saying and he's telling that back to me, which means he's telling that back to other people too. So that's what you're aiming for. And who do you want to have these messages? First of all, think about who is writing the will. So you don't want to overcomplicate your message. You don't want to patronize, because a person that's well connected with your cause will have a whole history of understanding what your cause means to them. And who's talking about what they're doing? Like I said before, it would be ideal if everybody within your organization, from the CEO to the volunteer in the shop and everywhere in between, and that's not a judgmental scale, that's just talking about different ends of the spectrum. It would be great if everybody was just empowered to say, we accept legacies, we accept gifts and wills, they're absolutely brilliant for our cause, and this is the impact that they can have. I'm going to give an example of a will campaign, which I think perfectly gets the 3 R's and delivered it really well. And it was the Scottish Wildlife Trust, and it was back in 2015, and I still go back to this. It was a 30-second video, and you'll have to excuse me, I've just taken screenshots because I don't trust being able to do video for you right now. But it starts off and it spans a beautiful landscape, and it says, on Wednesday, Jean helped us to release beavers back into the wild. You go, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. That's exciting. On Thursday, she helped us plant trees for red squirrels. Now, it's interesting information. Some of the people that are reading this might not know that there needs to be specialist trees for red squirrels, and the fact that it's red squirrels and not grey squirrels. So it's talking about things to do very specifically with a wildlife cause. And then on Friday, she helped to safeguard our lands and seas. And at this point, you might be thinking, gosh, she's busy. What's she been doing? Is she a super volunteer, or is she the CEO out on the reserves and chipping in? Is she part of the marketing team? Who's Jean? And then the final scene, beautiful imagery. And then the surprise is, on Saturday, it was 5 years since Jean passed away. Now, that really just shows that a legacy can be so long-standing and it can mean different things. And I just think it's a beautiful way of describing the impact of a legacy and the longevity. Now, who's Jean? Okay, one of the questions that came up last week was that it was really difficult to actually find an exact testimonial of somebody who has left you a gift in the will. I had a bit of a debate with Oliver at MaWO about this just before this session, because my perspective has always been, does it really matter who Jean is? I mean, Jean could be anybody. She could be any of your supporters. It doesn't need to be a specific person. Now, some people feel a bit uncomfortable about that. Is somebody going to say, well, I want to see the evidence of who this actual person is and where did that investment go? That's that, in my experience, and I've worked with legacies for a very long time, I have never had somebody actually do that, apart from somebody in a comms team who's said, are these facts absolutely correct? Jean's a generic name of that generation, and chances are somebody at some point did give the Scottish Wildlife Trust a gift in their will, and they were called Jean. But it doesn't really specifically matter. You don't need to run around the houses. You can create an ideal type of supporter. You know your supporters. Who are they? What do they look like? And if you don't know, then it's okay to ask questions in your marketing. You can say, we think that the person that has given the wonderful anonymous person that's given us a legacy and it has made this difference, or an anonymous person, I won't try and say that again, this person that we don't know the identity of, who could give us a legacy, who do you think they would be? You know, what are their hobbies? What do they like? Why do they like us? And it's okay to ask questions, because actually by asking questions, you show you care about the supporters that are going to make such a personal commitment to you. And actually, it gives an opportunity for engagement. And that's a really lovely thing, I think. It's different to always asking for a request for money. It's showing that you care. And it's actually saying, honestly, we don't know where this kindness comes, and we would love to know. And can you give us some examples? I've run a campaign with a hospice recently, and they actually put that pledge out to the community, and they did get people phoning up, and they did get people when they came into reception or when they crossed the path with anybody within the organisation saying, I'm one of those people, I am one of your pledges. Now, obviously, it's deeply personal and not everybody's going to share that details, but if you don't ask, it's the same with any kind of fundraising, you don't find out. So who are your audiences? It's quite a useful activity, actually, internally, to get that internal buy-in, to run some training with the broader organisation, to have a think about the pen portraits of who it might be that would give you a gift in their will. Is it a lottery player? Is it somebody that comes to one of your shops? Is it somebody that's a service user? Is it somebody part of your faith community? What matters to them? Is there a common interest? Do you have a common theme? Now, definitely, if you're faith-based, that's your common theme. If you're wildlife and conservation-based, that's your common theme. If you're trying to fix a medical problem, that's your common theme. But you can play around with these different portraits, and you can talk about what is similar about your audiences and what is different, and just make that human connection, because the way that somebody identifies with your cause, that personal reason that they think this is why that cause is part of who I am, that is the background to creating a really strong legacy proposition. Now, it's difficult for some causes. I've worked with wildlife causes, and it's wonderful because you've got the beautiful imagery. Sometimes you've got too many stories to tell, and that can be a challenge in and of itself. But for some smaller causes, then do you know that everybody that is going to, that you would like to consider to leave a gift to you, has that same connection? Have they got that same lived experience? And how do we resolve those with our messages? Some missions are definitely harder to define. They really are. I've worked with a lot of hospices and palliative care. For somebody who's not experienced the wonderfulness of the support that is given in a hospice environment or in a medical environment, that can be a challenge. For people that are not interested in international development or education, or perhaps they've got a different perspective to the causes that you're promoting, then that can be a challenge. But I think in order to find your own personal 3 Rs for your cause, you can flip the issue on its head by addressing what actually makes a difference and to people. How do they feel, and what's it like if your problem is eased? Describe to your audience, both internally and externally, how they can actually relate to what you're trying to do. So for instance, if you've got a condition and one of the symptoms is that your limbs are sore, or if you're fretful about the state of the world, everybody can identify to a feeling of discomfort, or a gap in their knowledge if perhaps they didn't get as much education as they wanted, or there's all kinds of key points within your cause and within the problem that you are trying to resolve that is actually very relatable to an individual's experience. And if you can tap into that and ask somebody to think about, how does it feel if you've got a beating heart with anxiety because you're either excited or you're worried about something? Imagine if that was all the time. Or what is it like if you've got a headache? Or what is it like for any number of reasons? And if you ask the question of people and they can relate that to their own experience and then think, gosh, by leaving a legacy to this cause, I can alleviate that problem or help look into research to help that problem for people that are living like that all the time. And it could be me, and it's not me, but it could be me. Or maybe the person does suffer from those issues too. And actually, it's a way that they can think, well, I have got this problem. It's not going to be resolved for me in my lifetime, but by leaving a legacy, then I can make sure that other people don't have the same experience as me. Going back to the hospice experience, and it wasn't a sunny day and it wasn't a train that was on time, but I remember one of the first times that I was going to promote legacies to a hospice and help run with an appeal. I was waiting at the side of a train station and the ticket man came up to me and was asking me where I was going, just, time of day, having a bit of a chit chat. And I said, I work for a hospice. And honestly, if he could have run a mile, I think he would. He backed off straight away. I was like, no. Now, it's clearly he hadn't had the experience of that cause, and so was worried about it and didn't want to have anything to do with that kind of type of work, which was dreadfully sad, but it's also dreadfully true. So it got me to thinking about how you can actually make things relatable and talk about the positive things. I think all the legacy adverts, or many of the legacy adverts that just pull on heartstrings and make you feel unhappy, are a lot less effective than the ones that can actually shine a light on the good things that are happening. So for instance, in a hospice, you talk about being comforting and how you actually make an experience, how you make tired feet feel less tired. You don't cure the tiredness, but you make it feel more comfortable. How you surround people with things that are lovely and comforting and supportive. With other organisations, not just the hospice sector, what problem are you solving and how is it relatable? You're giving children the opportunity to read, or you're making sure that wildlife isn't experiencing damage because of our impact, but make it really specific, a specific example or a number of specific examples that are relatable to as many people in their own life as possible. Now, I did get the challenge for that particular hospice that I had to find somebody specific, and it is lovely if you can find an actual example. I wanted to talk about how some of the ways that hospice can provide comfort is by giving people a entertaining experience. So you'll have people coming in and doing craft work, you'll have people coming in and singing or entertainment, or hospices are always made to look beautiful for different times of the year, whether it's Valentine's Day, Easter or Christmas or whatever. So I went on a mission to try and find a supporter who in her lifetime had been somebody very keen on working within the community, enjoyed singing, liked a bit of theatre and performance, liked sewing, all of those things. And I did manage to find an example actually, and I'd like to introduce you to Beryl. It took me months to find her though, and I'm not really sure whether the return on the investment needed my hours and hours and hours of trawling through wills to find a specific example. And actually, truth be told, this particular example hadn't given a huge legacy. So it's lovely to have a personal example. However, some feedback as well is when you do find an example, and I'd just like to mention this too, and then you quickly think that you have to move on and tell different stories about different people. That's certainly the direction of comms departments that know that they won't get in the press unless you've got a new story. Actually, I think that from a supporter point of view and from an internal point of view, if you've got a poster person for your legacy campaign or a poster theme for your legacy campaign, and you just build on that and tell additional stories on it, then that is a bit more powerful. Think about the commercial world, for instance. We don't have different clowns making hamburgers. Ronald McDonald has stuck around for a very long time. So find the thing that works, and you can test different ways that different themes can work or different examples can work. And then when you found your golden one, I would stick with it for a while and see if you can develop it further. The whole point of creating these messages is so that they can be rememberable. And if you're changing them all the time, then that's not going to work. The other point of the message is make it relatable to you, but then also, why should somebody care about it? And then provide the reason of why they should care. I'm aware that I'm sort of running close to time, so I'll carry on. So the point of the message is, what does it make people feel? Make it personal and make it impactful, certainly if you can. Working with wildlife organisations, again, you know, we talk about red squirrels, but talk about how red squirrels, similar to our experience of living, they can be either right-handed or left-handed. Now, that's something that has stuck with me, that's been rememberable. Working with air ambulance organisations, one in particular that I've worked with, 1 in every 5 of their life-saving missions is fueled by gifts in wills. Now, that's an amazing statement to take with you and to take and share with everybody. So every time they see a helicopter, you know, every 5th time, that's a gift in a will that's powering that. If you've got medical conditions, again, talk about how it makes you feel. How does it make you feel if you have a small experience or even a massive experience of the problem that your charity is trying to resolve? And how would it make you feel if you could take away that discomfort? Or how would it make you feel if you could spread the joy and the wonderfulness of being involved with that particular cause? The last time we talked about legacy messages, it was all about inspiration, and inspiration can be found in all kinds of places. So the point of getting your internal team involved is to get them to give you the legacy messages. I'm a big fan of asking all your audiences questions so that you can continue to learn about what it is that actually makes somebody leave a gift in their will, or what it is that it could make them leave a gift in their will. A good dose of surprise and delight. Going back to the wildlife example, the Scottish example, where you're talking about different things that are actually done within your charity, and then the person actually hasn't been there for however many years, but her name and her memory and her impact has lived on. And it's also how we collectively want to make a better world. That's what we're talking about, and that's something that we can all talk about. People that are working for you have a reason that they're working for you. So if you can ask them why, and then how that relates more broadly in the bigger picture, then that really is your legacy conversation. And if you allow people to think that they don't have to talk about the technical side of things, they can talk about the bigger picture, and they can talk about why things are personal to them, then that really means that you've got a very effective legacy message throughout the whole of your team. And run with that and drip feed it into your other communications as well, if you can, so that people then recognise that's your legacy message. Yes, you do accept gifts in wills, and actually what a wonderful and fantastic way to support an organisation that is. Remember as well, when somebody's made a pledge, research has shown that they're a lot more likely to give in their lifetime, and so that's pretty good too. That's me done, actually. So if anybody's got any questions, I think I've finished on time.
So thank you very much indeed for that, Claire. Really, really appreciate it. Lots and lots to think about there. Please, anybody feel free to stick questions in the chat or unmute yourselves and say and ask. I have one that popped into my head when you were talking about the even 1%. Now that's something which I've, we're not fundraising consultants, but it's a well-known message, and it's something which I've discussed with the charities that we work with, and I know lots use that. It's not the first time I've heard a criticism that it makes people think down to 1%. What message have you found to be effective at guiding people to think about leaving a residuary gift rather than a pecuniary legacy, because residuary gifts do tend to be significantly larger? From your experience, what has been the most effective message to get people thinking residuaries, but without putting a limit on the amount that they want to leave?
I know exactly what you mean, and it is really interesting. The thing is, in other areas of fundraising, you do give a specific amount. So you say £10.60 could provide meals for a week, or in this situation, or £20.30 could do this. And it's very, very much that you want a specific thing. And I understand the 1%, it probably was initially a driver for residuary as opposed to pecuniary. So instead of £1,000 or £500 or £10,000, which will depreciate over time, then a percentage is better. But I think going the 1%, I would say any percent of your estate. And another thing as well that often comes up, I quite often see that after you've looked after your nearest and dearest, then any percentage. I'm not a massive fan of that language either. I don't think you need to say in a kind of almost a patronising way, just make sure you look after your loved ones first and then give us a bit. I don't think you need to do that. I think any percentage, and a percentage is better than a fixed sum because things can change. But any percentage would be greatly appreciated. So I think that's the message. And also just another thing is just not to restrict. In lots of other areas of fundraising, you'll have specific appeals because you want to, you want another helicopter, or you want a reserve to be improved, or you want to set up a church or a hospital, or any of those things that there is specific capital appeal. In legacies, you definitely don't want something to be restricted for a specific thing, because if that's already been achieved, then that pot of money can't actually be converted, and there's billions of pounds each year that are in restricted income that can't be given. So I think open-ended, the person that's actually making a will is that they do have the capacity, Oliver, don't they? And they're not coerced, and they're following things absolutely correctly. So you don't need to handhold them through how much they want to give. That's their own personal decision. But if you think big and you've got an amazing thing, we're going to change the world, and you only need to give us 1%, that for me, it doesn't jar. And why would you encourage down? It also, if we are going to touch on the tax thing, you have to give over 10% for some benefits anyway. So I don't even know where the 1% came from. But yeah, keep it open-ended, keep it inspiring, keep it inclusive, and don't be afraid to ask, because you're not getting somebody to sign on the dotted line now. You're just saying, think about it. And if you have thought about it, and if you have, would you like to tell us? And some people will go, no, I'd rather pay you not to know that because I don't want stewarding. Thank you very much. Don't spend my money. But other people, they go, yes, I do want to tell, and I am happy to share my reason for supporting you. But have those conversations, ask those questions, and don't be afraid. Don't think, oh no, I can't ask about legacies because then I'm going to be asked all kinds of technical questions, which I'll look silly if I don't know the answers to. Just talk about, your aspirations for your cause, and that's the conversation. And if they've got any legal questions, direct them to Make a Will online, because
we will pop in.
That's what you're there for.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. The first one's from Holly, Thank you, Holly. A couple of questions from me. There seems to be a big trend in using young children in visual legacy messaging. I wonder if people had thoughts for or against this. I understand the connection to memories and leaving something for the future, but wonder if it alienates certain audiences. That's the first question. So the use of younger children in legacy messages.
I think it's interesting. I've just done a TV advert actually for a hospice, and it's an adult hospice as well as a children's hospice. And we did use we did use a local football team, and we did use some children who are actually children of the fundraisers because we were on a very small budget. And the message was just simply be kind. And I think that it was appropriate completely because it was just showing a community feel for that particular hospice. I think that thinking about the future definitely does work for many people. Now, for people that don't have children, perhaps a more sort of conservation, and I'm not saying that for people that aren't embraced by seeing a child image, then mix your messages up. And again, ask the question, what is it that makes you want to actually give? And you can do instant polls now on social media, and you can ask questions when you're sending out letters for appeals. I always suggest that you have a one-line statement of, are you interested in hearing about a legacy, and why would you be interested? You know, gather that information. But having that question actually can provoke some amazing conversations anyway. I do think as well, just while you're off, I do think that some of the heartstrings, I mean, you know, Sad Donkeys are brilliant and it's been very effective. And actually the donkeys and the dogs and the cats have stayed in the top 10 of the legacy league table again this year. That's been announced. And they are relatable. And again, it's because they've actually gone up the league table because more people during lockdown actually had pets or were aware of people having pets. So it's that relatability. But I would prefer, because you're talking inspiration, then I think the messages should be positive rather than the ones that make you want to turn off the telly or make you not want to read that part of your newsletter or make you not go to that website because you're just going to get misery and you don't want misery. It's comfort, compassion, and the nice things that your cause does that is the focus really for legacies, in my opinion. Certainly successful legacy campaigns.
Thank you. So keeping it relatable is key, and whether that includes or doesn't include children, I guess, is the down to the charity and the supporters that are likely to want to leave a legacy. The second question is around legacy policy. This is again from Holly. Thank you. My second question is around legacy policy. Are there any good examples of explaining how legacies are spent, e.g. internal funds to apply in marketing comms?
Well, I've tended to do this when I've administered ones for air ambulances, for instance. I know, for instance, for one particular organisation, it takes £3,500 every time a life-saving message sets off. So if somebody comes in with a specific amount of a legacy, then to give back to the executor or to the solicitor, because actually they're people too, and they pass on messages. You're a person, aren't you? But I break that down then to say how many life-saving missions that legacy actually translates to. And the same can be adapted for other charities too. If you get a legacy of 50 grand, how does that relate to the work that you do or the work that you could do? So it's once you've received these legacies, that's when you can talk about how the amount relates. It's the flip side to normal fundraising. You're going to ask for anything because it's every drop in the ocean that makes the enormous sea. But you can talk about how impactful legacies actually are, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, we just we've got a thank you from Holly. unless there's any other questions that anybody wants to unmute and ask or pop in the chat, I think all that remains to be said is, Claire, thank you so much for coming up with really inspirational ways to communicate internally with the team about the importance of gifts in wills. I think there are a lot of examples there and ideas that can be used for communicating with supporters equally, but getting that internal engagement is so important. And thank you for all of those ideas, and well put. If anybody needs to get in touch with Claire or wants to follow anything up, you can contact her directly through
keypace.com. And I do love that. I do one-off sessions where I'll come in and I'll talk legacies to the team, and it's lovely seeing that light bulb moment when people think, when you tell a receptionist, do you know what, this big amount that's just come in, it's because of you. It's because of the way that you were on the phone, or when you tell people that are volunteering, or when you tell community fundraisers that work all the hours and don't necessarily get in all the money, that actually the legacy income is because of their hard work, 7 days a week and all kinds of hours. And it's lovely to connect with people and actually ask those questions. What is it that you do that make you so important to people? And quite often, well, we provide a service of this. And I was like, okay, well, what do you actually do? And having those questions, sometimes from an outside perspective, it really helps, because people think, gosh, we do this, and that's why legacies come, and that's why they're so amazing and inspirational.
Absolutely. No, so thank you so much, everybody, and thanks to everybody who came along to these sessions. We'll circulate the recording so that you can share with colleagues and engage them and get them thinking positively about legacies throughout the organisation.
Yeah, great to see you all connected. And I'll get all those emails sent out later on today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to me.
All right. Bye-bye, Pix.